What's a man to do? This is the 21st century, and frankly, I had damn few options, and none of them were without pain. Not physical pain, but emotional and financial pain. I would suffer, the kids would suffer. Hell, the dog would suffer too. Sad. I never, not for a minute, thought I would face such an ordeal. When I was growing up in middle school in Albany, the problems were always school, sports, and then girls. Girls were the problem. I liked them, really liked them, and then I liked them, really liked them. In retrospect, you could say that I loved them too much. That's not entirely true. Without that degree of love, I wouldn't have had 2 children. No, my problem was simple. I was no longer fit to be a man, in her opinion. So to solve her problem, she decided to find a man she actually wanted to have fun with. It turned out that I was perfectly fine, still working and supporting everyone. It was just that doing it with Kathleen was all but eliminated. I started turning her down the rare times she offered, but all she would do was shrug, say, "Okay, your loss," and go to bed. Oddly enough, for a while I still slept in the same bed with her. It was more for appearance's sake, for the sake of the kids. I slept on my side of the bed, and she slept on hers. In the middle was a no man's land where neither of us dared set foot. I guess I got used to it. As time went on, I realized that Kat was spending more and more time with her boyfriend. She came home late a couple times a week, and one Friday morning she announced that she was going away for the weekend. I asked her where she was going and with whom. She said I didn't need to know. I didn't really want to know, I thought. The odd weekend turned into 2 weekends a month. The kids were very curious and would ask her where she was going. She always answered, "To help a friend." Yeah, right. It went on like that for about a year, and I realized that if I wanted to have any kind of life at all, I needed to move my butt and do something for myself. My kids and I filled our weekends with tons of activities. They had a bunch of school sports and clubs that took up most of their free time. I didn't have as much. I filled my time by being there for them whenever I could. I went to games and practices, drove them and their friends wherever they needed a ride. I decided that the more I had to do with the kids, the less I would think about Kat. Kat took care of the kids and even cooked the occasional family meal. She planned our family activities that we did, but I could see that her interest level was dwindling. She was constantly texting on her phone. When I would look in her direction, she would put her phone in her purse and then pretend to be interested in what we were doing. The kids would ask me why their mother was absent so often. I didn't have an answer that I thought would be appropriate for them. I remember telling them, "You should ask your mom about that. I'm sure she can give you lots of details." It was about that same year that I realized that I had long since ceased to be considered the man Kat wanted as her husband. I learned from expensive sources that she was having fun with 2 different men. One was about 10 years younger than her, a clerk at the firm's law school. The other paramour, her main squeeze, was actually another lawyer at the firm where she worked. He's a few years older, married, has a wife and 2 kids. He's a senior partner. Kat seems to like shopping where she works. A man can only take so much. I talked to the kids. They sensed that not everything in our world is perfect. They had pretty much lost track of the times their mom was or wasn't around. They just stopped counting and caring about it. The time the 3 of us spent together was noticeable, as they often told classic daddy stories about our camping trips and travels when Kat wasn't around. I think she sometimes paid attention to this. I volunteered at school events, and a few of the most observant noticed that Kat was never there. A casual question from one of the mothers would let me know they were watching. When one of them asked where she was, my standard response was, "She's busy." I pulled my old bike out of the garage, took it to the shop for maintenance and overhaul, and started riding again. The first few times were educational. Muscles I hadn't used in a long time let me know that I had been a slug for too long. After the first few times, I started using Voltaren more often. There is a mountain biking group in town and I went there. It was a lot of fun. But I was in a hell of a lot of pain afterward. Afterward, the group would usually head to the Fox and Hound pub for a pint of beer. What the hell, I needed it. I was enjoying it. I lost a few pounds. My pant size became 31 inches in the waist, and my shirt size became a medium, tight fit. I lost weight from 185 pounds to 160 pounds. I looked much better considering my height is only 5 feet 11 inches. I started going to the gym at lunchtime. It is available on the first floor of the building I work in. My workout is also flexible, so I can take work with me if I want to. I am a CPA management consultant. I have plastic braces that you wear on your teeth. I had a few teeth that started to shift, and I wanted to make sure everything in my mouth was where it should be. When I was a kid, my mother and father spent an amount equal to the cost of a small used car on braces, and I didn't want their investment to go to waste. My own children would soon need braces, and what better way to show them that this wasn't the horror story their friends were telling them than to be an example myself? I usually only wore them when I slept. Kat never noticed, or if she did, she never once said anything to me about it. The kids talked me into going clothes shopping to buy things that fit me better. We went to the Tommy Hilfiger Mall. My cousin works there as a manager and gave me a family discount of 40% off the price. I couldn't turn it down. I bought contact lenses. The kids really laughed at me when I tried to put them in my eyes. The first few times it was like being poked in the eye with my thumb. Eventually I got the hang of it, and now they go in and out in seconds. I still wear glasses when I work, but now I have new ones. My kids helped me choose the frames. Black horn-rimmed glasses are in fashion right now. When I was a teenager, we called them birth control specials. But times change. One of my high school moms never failed to invite me to a barbecue at her house. She is now divorced and has 2 children. She also works as a nurse in a hospital. With a divorce rate of about 50%, there are several single mothers and fathers with children in the same school my kids go to. The invitation was to a barbecue in the early evening. The kids were not invited. This meant that there would likely be alcohol on the menu. So I found a babysitter, made the kids promise to be on their best behavior, and went. Well, it was a learning experience. It seems Kat's extramarital activities weren't as secret as she thought. She had been spotted with her paralegal boyfriend at several restaurants and clubs in town. Sister Marilyn was quite diplomatic in her questions to me. Mostly she asked if the tall, very trim guy Kat had danced with had anything to do with her. I looked at her, took a sip of beer, and tried to formulate an answer that would preserve some modicum of dignity for me, and I suppose for Kat. But that was no longer the case at this point. Now that the proverbial cat was out of the bag, there was no point in trying to hide the truth. So I didn't try. I said that Kat had a social life very separate from her family. When asked if I had the same privilege, I said I was in the process of creating a similar privilege for myself. You should have seen the eyebrows go up at that. Next chapter. Slowly, very slowly, my life began to change. The lives of our entire family began to change. The kids were growing up and getting even busier. They had more sports and other interests. This meant that there was less and less time for other things. This meant that my free time began to shrink even more. To alleviate this problem in some way, I gradually tried to shift some of the responsibility for the children to Kat. I learned from a very wise person that eating an elephant is easy, one small forkful at a time, but it takes some time. So I started shifting some of the household chores and kid activities to Kat and carving out time for myself. I bought a new, red, expensive, Trek mountain bike. I bought a new Subaru Outback, outfitted with everything I needed to make it more rugged and able to handle the adventures I wanted to experience. I have participated in several events throughout the region. I really enjoy the training and the mud. Oh, the mud. I was covered in mud at the end of the competition and I loved it. So Kat's life changed too. I figured she could handle the family responsibilities too. She talked about how hectic her job was and how lawyers had to work crazy hours to get things done. That might have been partly true if it weren't for the fact that she was having fun with 2 guys and trying to make up for it with constant absences. No, I got to the point where I didn't care anymore. I emailed her my schedule and told her that I was busy too, and she would have to figure out how to distract her boyfriends from time to time. It worked with some success. It cut back on her freedom and gave me a little more freedom. Other things started to happen as well. I made new female friends. It was casual at first, but the more I got to know some of the women who were part of the mountain bike scene, the more I liked them. And I found that they liked me. Big deal. It was a damn pleasant realization. It gave me back the confidence that damn Cat had given me. I mean, why would your wife be having fun with other men if you're doing so well? When I first found out, my response was that I wasn't doing well and wasn't what she needed. But now I was asking myself if Cat was what I wanted. Next chapter. My children are as smart as their father. They realized their mother was increasingly absent from their lives, to the point where they stopped asking where she was. Then, as I began to leave the house more and more often to do my own thing, the children reported that their mother was giving them to their friends' mothers to raise. I would often come home and see a note on the kitchen table saying that the kids were at another house with their friends and that Cat would be back the next day. What the hell was that all about? I knew things had to change and that Cat was expiring fast. I went to see a family law attorney. It was all very educational. New York state law is primarily concerned with the welfare of the children of a marriage. Mothers usually get custody of the children, unless they are found unfit to care for the children. But I knew that argument would be irrelevant, especially after I told the attorney that my wife was a lawyer and gave her name. No, the attorney immediately assumed that I had little chance of getting full custody of the children. At the end of the conversation, I asked her to prepare a petition for dissolution of marriage. I told her when and where to file the papers. I headed home. In my mind, I wondered over and over again how long this situation. My attorney suggested that if I waited a little longer and Cat became more detached from the family, she might be willing to agree to more favorable divorce terms. What this really meant was that Cat would become so tired of being married with children that she might not give up the idea of leaving me and the children for her freedom. The idea made a certain amount of sense. I decided that I needed to talk to Cat and find out what her intentions really were. I chose a Thursday evening when I knew Cat would be home. The kids were in their rooms, reading and getting ready for bed. I went to the refrigerator, pulled out a beer, an IPA that I like, and poured it into a glass. I found Cat in the family room with the TV on, open laptop next to her, and phone in hand. Work papers were spread out on the couch beside her and on the coffee table in front of her. I interrupted her concentration. I cleared my throat to let her know I was in the room. She looked up briefly and returned to her phone. Cat, we need to talk. About what? She continued to concentrate on typing. Look at me. We need to talk. Again, without raising her eyes, she replied, What do you want to talk about? I want to talk about us. I want to talk about how much longer you want to stay married. I want to talk about how much longer you still want to live here. I finally got her attention when her head jerked upward and she dropped her damn cell phone. What? 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 What do you mean? I mean that you and I aren't a couple anymore. You haven't been a part of our family for over a year and a half. You were very busy having fun with your two boyfriends. You weren't my wife and you weren't a mother to those two kids you gave birth to. That's what I mean. Her face reddened. I told you a long time ago that you don't own me, and I decide who I do it with. You don't want it, so I have the right to do it with whoever I want. That was bullshit, and she knew it. When was the last time you and I did it? Now she was starting to get angry. I don't know, and I don't care. Every time I've suggested you do it, you've refused. I nodded my head. Yeah, you're right. I guess I do have an aversion to sloppy thirds, but that's just me. I took a big sip of beer. I realized there wasn't going to be much here tonight. She raised her voice. So what the hell do you want from me? I take care of the kids and pay my share of all our household expenses. What do you want? Her game was to go on the attack. Her lawyering skills were showing in battle right now. I want to know how much longer you want to stay married. It's clear to me that you don't want me as your husband, and I have to tell you that I really don't want you as my wife. You know, you really are a shitty wife. She got up and left the room. She went to the kitchen and got a glass of wine. I figured she wouldn't come back, but she did. I guess she wanted to grab her phone and finish texting her boyfriends. During this brief exchange, I realized I had had enough. I immediately did one thing and mentally tagged myself to do another first thing on Friday. I went into the bedroom and started clearing out the closet of all my stuff and moving it into the guest bedroom. It took me a few trips, but I got through it in about an hour. Kat continued to do her chores in the family room. I slept pretty soundly that night. The next morning at breakfast, I talked to the kids. Kat had left before they even got ready to eat, and I was able to tell them that changes were coming to the house. Their mother and I are going to sort out some things about the two of us, but I want to make sure it doesn't affect them first. They looked at me as they munched on chips and toast and nodded. I sensed that they had expected this development. I called my lawyer as soon as I got to the office and told her she could take care of the paperwork and hand it over to my wife. I wanted it to be served in her office. I figured it was a crime scene, so to speak, and what better place for her and maybe even her boyfriends to realize that their decisions and actions have consequences. Next chapter. Kathleen. A bailiff showed up at my office, handed me an envelope, and said the words I've heard many times before. You have been served. I didn't hesitate long, gave the envelope to the receptionist and told her to register it in the registry she kept and see what case it belonged to. I took the cup of coffee to my office and got to work. A few minutes later, she appeared in the doorway with an envelope in her hands. What is it? Her carefully sculpted eyebrows flew upward as she replied, Oh, it's for you personally. Oh, what is it? You really should take a look at it. She walked into my office and placed the envelope on the desk in front of me. It was already open, and I pulled out the folder. I looked at the cover page and realized what Tom had been talking about last night. At that moment, I got a phone call. I picked up the phone. It was Robert. Could you come to my office immediately, please? Although he said please, it was an order, not a request. I stood up, adjusted my skirt, and walked to his office. What the hell, Kathleen? I got this when I came in this morning. He handed me a folder, and it was a lawsuit for alienation of affection. You don't get lawsuits like that in New York. I slowly put it back on the desk and sat down on the leather couch in his large office. I've just been served with a divorce suit. Tom wants me to leave. What are his terms? I don't know. I haven't looked into it yet. I'm not going to bring in anyone from the firm to represent me. I'll probably represent myself. I don't want any rumors flying around. Damn right you don't. Because if Judy finds out what you and I have been up to, she'll make a fuss, and it'll cost me more than I want to pay. Robert has teenage children, a big house, a big mortgage, and a lifestyle to match. He and his wife Judy live well, but their divorce will hit him financially, but more importantly, raise his reputation in the firm and in the community at large. What am I doing worrying about Robert? My own hurricane is gaining strength, and I need to calm it down soon. Oh shit, my stomach isn't feeling its best. I run to the restroom on the side of the office, and just before I reach the toilet, the contents of my bowels spill out. Next chapter. Kathleen, later that morning. I grabbed a bottle of water, closed my office door, and started going through the papers. The lawyer in me woke up, and I made a few notes on a yellow notepad. Tom was going for the throat. He listed adultery as the grounds. He listed the names and addresses of Robert and James. He indicated that I had been in a relationship with them for approximately 2 years. He stated that he wanted full custody of the children, citing that I was often absent from our family and home, and therefore he was the best parent for custody. My right to be the custodial parent was challenged. A document was attached that listed all the time I had spent with Robert and James over the past year. Tom wanted the house, half of all our savings, and child support until the kids graduated from university. That was going to be in a few years. But the most interesting part was what the family court judge was going to gouge me for. Tom wanted medical tests for a full range of sexually transmitted diseases and wanted to know the names of all the other partners I'd had since we'd been married. Damn. The judge would be sympathetic on medical grounds, except it's going to be hard to get around. Tom wanted to kick me out of the house, claiming I was no longer a good example for the kids. He basically called me a tramp. Neither Robert nor James ever showed up at my house. I made sure of that. I tried to call Tom, but his cell phone immediately went straight to voicemail. I left an angry message, which in retrospect may not have been such a good idea. I left a few more messages asking him to change his mind, and maybe we could work on getting things back on track. I thought about going to his office, but decided I wouldn't get past the receptionist. Nevertheless, I needed to act quickly. I got in my car and drove there. I managed to get past the receptionist by just walking into the office as if I was there. She didn't even look up. Tom wasn't in the office. I waited for him for about an hour, but he never showed up. I left, knowing I had things to do. I was now in damage control mode. When I got back to my office, the hurricane had picked up speed. There was another process officer waiting for me with an envelope. It was a temporary court order stating that I was not allowed to reside in my home for the next 30 days or until a formal hearing where certain details would be settled. I was given time to return home and retrieve necessary personal belongings and clothing, as well as work-related documents, computers, and related equipment. I was to call the court clerk to schedule a time, but that was not to be until tomorrow at the earliest. Tom's lawyer appeared to be on top of things, and I was already struggling to get things done. Next chapter. Tom. I texted Kat to tell her that I would pack a bag for her and drop it off at her office. I asked her to send me a list of what she needed. Or she could come home and have my attorney supervise her packing. I was home all day, but I got a call from my boss informing me that Kat had been standing in my office for over an hour waiting for me to return. He wouldn't let anyone near her. I thanked him. Kat showed up at the house late in the afternoon when she found out the kids were coming home from school. I looked at her. You know you're not allowed to be here by court order. Why would you do something like that? It's not necessary and it's just ridiculous. You want to keep me away from the kids? Why would you do that? Come on, now you're a concerned parent who wants to be with your kids? What about all the weekends you spent with your boyfriends? All the weekday nights you skipped bedtime? All the kids' activities you couldn't find time for? You took every opportunity to spend time with your boyfriends instead of your kids or me. At this point, I was almost screaming. And now you come home to tell me I'm ridiculous? If you wanted a divorce so you could have fun with anyone, why the hell didn't you just tell me that? Why all this nonsense? Tell me. What I do and don't do is none of your business. Who I have fun with is none of your business. You could have had fun with me every week, but you missed your chance. My chance? My goddamn chance. Oh, how rich. You offer me sketchy thirds, and when I turn down the chance to get an STD from you and your boyfriends, you just turn away and ignore me. Well, now I have the opportunity to ignore you. Get the shit you came for and get the hell out. Now. Kat stepped back a little, and her face turned red. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer's number. When she answered, I said, "Looks like my wife doesn't understand court orders and came here unaccompanied by any court official to get her shit together." She told me to take her picture if I could, and that she would call the police and have them come to the house. Kat took her time getting ready, and lo and behold, 2 policewomen arrived. I explained the situation to them and showed them a copy of the court order. After some discussion, I pointed them to the bedroom. They went up the stairs, and after some loud talking, they escorted Kat into the kitchen. To say she was furious is a vast understatement. She lashed out at the police officers. The head policeman told her to calm down or she would be handcuffed and taken to the station. One of the policemen looked at me and asked if I wanted to press charges. I inhaled, then exhaled and told her no. I decided that was enough to let her know that I had been angry with her for the past year and a half and that we had reached a breaking point. The policeman escorted her back upstairs. Kat packed her suitcase, grabbed some work stuff from the office, and walked out the front door to her car. I went back into the house, closed the door, and called my lawyer to report what had happened. I had several pictures of Kat with the police officers. Next chapter. A few days later, my lawyer called to say that Kat's lawyer, she decided she needed a family law specialist, Kat specializes in corporate law, had called and asked for a meeting. The four of us would sit down, calmly discuss things and work things out. I agreed that a face-to-face meeting might speed up the process. It was to be held in my attorney's conference room 2 days later. At home, the kids were very curious about where their mom was. Being away for such a long time was a little unusual. Sure, she had been away before, but she always let the kids know what she was doing and where she was going. When I heard her stories, I could fake a cough or laugh, and she would look at me with the corners of her eyes and make a mocking grimace. I got to the meeting a little early to talk to the lawyer. We discussed the general goals I wanted to accomplish and how to convince Kat that it was in her best interest to agree to this. What Kat's lawyer didn't say beforehand was that the plan was for them to cite that the situation was out of control. That Kat was deeply remorseful for all the pain she had unknowingly caused me, and that our marriage was precious to her, and that we would resolve all issues and problems through marriage counseling, and that she should move home immediately to be with me and the kids. Right. All the while, Kat and her lawyer were going on and on about the importance of marriage to a family, and how children grow up better in a two-parent household rather than a single-parent household, and blah, blah, blah. It was all a bunch of bullshit. We all understood it, and I gave her an incredulous look on my face. My lawyer responded with a question to a question. Have you gotten your STD test results yet? Kat and her legal eagle looked at each other, then at me, and answered question for question. Why do you need medical testing? I snorted and answered her lawyer. Because I want to make sure she hasn't given me some strange and deadly disease. Are you sure Robert and James weren't having fun with other people? If so, let's ask them. Heads quickly whirled, they jumped up, and now both Kat and her lawyer were yelling at me. I ignored them and sat with my arms crossed. Finally, they sat down and calmed down. Her lawyer suggested, there's no need to involve anyone else in this private matter. Next week, we'll run an STD test and report all relevant results. I quickly added, looking Kat in the face, I want the results in writing, whatever they are. Right now, I don't trust you, as you can guess. Next chapter. The divorce was going to be long and painful. I knew Kat didn't want her boyfriends involved in our affairs. Especially Robert, he had the most to lose, and I knew that if we served him with a summons, nothing good would come of it. His career would suffer, and his wife would probably be a little angry with him. It would cost him dearly. With James, it was a different story. To buy his silence, he could be threatened with dismissal or rewarded with a promotion and money. He was unmarried and lived with no one, but my investigator learned that he enjoyed the company of both women and men in his bed. That alone could have disrupted the harmony of the law firm. Scandal is bad for business. Kat had a lot to lose. Weeks dragged on for months, and then litigation began to overturn a previous court order, barring Kat from the house. She got it overturned and came home triumphantly to find that neither I nor the kids were in the house. We had gone to Disney World in Florida. My cell phone lit up. Calls and text messages from Kat were in abundance. The main subject was, "Where are you?" After a while, I replied that the kids and I were very busy and having fun. After that, I turned my phone off and it stayed off for the rest of our stay in Florida. As we flew on the plane home, I realized that I had the difficult job of managing the house and, well, everything else. When we landed in Albany, I took a moment and called my attorney. She advised me to do nothing to keep things calm and to tell Kat as little as possible. My attorney worked at a feverish pace to get the order preventing Kat from being in the house reinstated. She recognized that it might take some time. I decided that my life was going to be a living hell in the coming weeks. And so it did. Kat was jubilant to see the kids and gave them a long hug as soon as we pulled into the driveway of the house. The kids had to work hard to break free of her iron grip and escape to their rooms. I busied myself with gathering up the kids' dirty laundry and my own, then shoving it into the washing machine. Kat was working in the kitchen, not her usual environment, and trying to make us a meal. The smell was, well, akin to the smell of burnt old sneakers. Disgusting. I used the phone and called for Chinese delivery. When it arrived, I called the kids into the kitchen and served them the food. They devoured the food with gusto to the sound of their mom inundating them with questions about Disney World. I ate in silence. When the kids were done, they got a reprieve from the inquest and hurried to watch a movie on the streaming service we subscribed to. I cleaned up the kitchen under Kat's watchful gaze. She sat down at the table. "I miss the kids and you so much, Tom." It was said so quietly that I almost let it pass my ears. But I couldn't let it go unheeded. "What? Where were your boys? I suppose they were glad to keep you company." The next battle in our war proved to be only the first salvo. "I'm not dating anyone, Tom. I want us to be a family and do all the things we have to do. I know you don't believe that, but I love you very much." I interrupted her. "But not enough to close your legs to other men." Kat ignored my comment. "I made an appointment for us to see a marriage counselor. We need to get our marriage back on track, and this will be a good start." "Really? You think that will help?" "Yes. We need to figure out what's important and focus on that." And she didn't stop talking for what seemed like an eternity. I left the kitchen, and she followed me into the bedroom, chatting the whole way. I closed the door in her face. I noticed that she had already unpacked and was going to sleep in the master bedroom. I shook my head, thinking I was going to have to work hard. I gathered up a bunch of her things, walked to the door, opened it, and threw everything out into the hallway. Some of it fell on her head, which interrupted her soliloquies for a while. I closed the door. She opened the door, carrying her stuff back into the house. And so it began. Or continued. Shit. Next chapter. The following weeks passed merrily. Kat adjusted to our situation, pretending that nothing much was going on. That my claims were really exaggerated. That her having fun with 2 other men was just something I shouldn't care about. That this is normal in the modern age, and that it doesn't mean she doesn't love me or our children. One thing she did do was go back to the family court judge and formally request marriage counseling. I was unable to attend court that day. I figured she scheduled it when she knew I couldn't make it. Sneaky bitch. And my attorney was unable to convince the judge that the marriage could not be saved and that any counseling at this point was pointless. The judge didn't buy that argument, saying that marriages that had suffered worse than ours had been saved, and so we could go and pour out our feelings in 10 sessions of counseling. Bloody marvelous. Kat and her lawyer arranged for us to see this marriage counselor. I assumed that after the counselor got the full picture of what was going on, he would conclude that our marriage was indeed over and we should move on with our lives. I was wrong. Kat found a counselor who held the New Age belief that modern marriage is much more fluid and flexible than the narrow confines of the old ways of thinking. That in the 21st century, we must see our commitment to monogamy as part of a bigger picture. That we need to see ourselves as independent, yet committed. I had to laugh. When I made my points that this would be great for us as a couple, both Kat and the counselor thought I had given up, and that Kat could find a way to have her cake and eat it at the same time. So when I stood up, thanked the counselor for her wisdom, and said that, "I think we're done," they looked at me with a puzzled expression on their faces. I knew that Kat had decided that she had won. For my part, I thanked them both. I thanked them for clearing up our new prenuptial agreement. When the counselor asked me to tell her what I thought this new prenuptial agreement meant to me, I replied, Well, it's very simple, and I want to thank you both for opening my eyes to it. Kat spoke first. Tom, thank you for your understanding, dear. You're welcome, Kat, and thank you, Dr. Snow. You've both been instrumental in making my life so much easier. The look on Kat's face was as if she had just won the Powerball lottery. That's wonderful, dear. We are definitely going to be better partners for each other, and I look forward to resuming the intimacy we used to have. I want to make love to the man I love. Good. And I want to make love to the woman I love. Smiles shone on Kat and Dr. Snow's faces. Their mission had been accomplished. In their opinion, I was living up to what they expected of me. Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, Dr. Snow wanted me to go back and talk to her myself. While Kat was celebrating her victory, the learned marriage-saving doctor wasn't so sure. I agreed to return and promised to schedule a time with the receptionist who was guarding the door. Next chapter. Leaving the marriage counselor's office, we headed home. On the way, Kat was all lovey-dovey. In the car, she wanted to hold my hand. The look on her face spoke volumes. Once we were in the house, I went to the home office to send some emails and update my attorney information. After dinner, Kat started putting the kids to bed, and I went to my bedroom to change. When I came out, Kat saw me getting ready to leave. Where are you going, Tom? I looked at her. Oh, it's my meeting at the bike club. I'll probably be late, so don't wait up for me. Bye. I was out the door and gone before Kat could say anything. The club had planned a 30-mile ride that evening, followed by a social hour afterward. I planned to enjoy both. I got very dirty during the ride and enjoyed a pint of Guinness in the pub afterward. Among the members were two single women who knew I was separated and divorcing, so I didn't fail to socialize with them. Both ladies were a pleasure to talk to. So much so that I asked one of them out on a date Saturday night 3 days later. I got home a little after midnight, and Kat was already in bed and asleep. I undressed and headed for the shower. I rinsed my dirty bike clothes in the sink in the laundry room and put them in the washing machine. After that, I headed to bed, which was in the guest bedroom. In the morning, I got up early and was ready to head to work. Kat showed up in the kitchen just as I was about to leave the house for my office. She looked a little worried. What time did you get home last night? I looked at her as I packed lunch and poured coffee for the trip. Around midnight. She asked, And what time will you get home tonight? I replied, Around 6. You have to pick up the kids from school today. That was the end of it, and I was out the door. Thursday and Friday evenings went pretty much the same way, and conversation between us was minimal. I realized that her self-restraint from having fun with her boyfriends was an attempt to make it appear that our family life would return to normal. But it wasn't. Saturday morning, Kat and I analyzed the day's schedule. We had to drive a lot to get the kids around to all the activities they were involved in. Kat had forgotten a lot of things since she had previously dumped many of her parenting responsibilities on me. She had taken on the responsibilities of a modern 21st century career woman who could do whatever she wanted. I, on the other hand, was the modern father, chauffeur, cook, cleaner, cheerleader, laundry god, and expert on all things parenting. My life was very planned and organized, but things were about to change. Saturday night I made dinner, and then, while the kids and Kat ate, I went to get ready for a date. I came down in khaki pants, a button-down shirt, and a sport jacket. The looks I got spoke volumes. Kat's jaw dropped. Where are you going? I have a date. I was short and simple. What? A date? What do you mean? I looked at her. You know what a date is. You've been on many of them. And then I took the car keys and kissed the kids on the tops of their heads. Be good for your mom and don't wait up for me. I'll probably be late. I walked out the door into the garage. Tom, wait, what are you doing? I stopped and turned around. Well, it's very simple. I have a date tonight. With a woman. You know, you have dates with your boyfriends. Here I have a date. I'll see you later. Kat's jaw almost dropped. I left. I had a great time. I took Laura to the local symphony orchestra, and then we went out for a late dinner at an Italian restaurant. Afterward, we walked around a bit, and then I dropped her off at her house. I was invited into the house and enjoyed a drink with her, and then kissed her as I left. Laura told me that she had a wonderful time and would like to do it again soon. I told her that I really enjoyed being with her, and that I would call her this week and we could talk. I called her, and we talked and scheduled another date. Next chapter. My social life was on the upswing after a long, dry spell. I hadn't touched Kat in many months. I didn't want to get infected, even though I was sure Kat wasn't stupid enough to not use protection with James. So, I mentioned earlier that we were seeing a marriage counselor, Dr. Snow. I have to tell you, she gave off an old hippie vibe. The old lady was in her early 60s, her clothes were the same age, and her graying hair was styled in a hairstyle reminiscent of a school teacher. It became clear to me that her attitude toward marriage might be a little different from mine. She talked about the newfangled mumbo-jumbo that essentially gave legitimacy to open marriages, polyamory, and other forms. I called it screwed up. After a fairly lengthy correspondence, I asked her what she had against traditional monogamous marriage between a man and a woman. She had to elaborate a bit. I have nothing against the traditional view of marriage, but in this day and age, marriage should be seen as something that makes us happy. Regardless of the form of marriage, if everyone involved is happy, that's what matters. I see. I stared at the floor for a few seconds as I considered what I wanted to say. I took a deep breath and then looked Dr. Snow in the eye. Doctor, you've lost sight of the fact that I'm not happy. I married Kathleen with the understanding that we would only do it with each other. We have 2 children as a result, and they expect stability in a home where there is no parade of people coming in and out of their mother's bed or mine. The face of the man they see at breakfast or dinner is mine, not the one who spent the night with their mother. I know you think I'm old-fashioned, but that's me. And I have to tell you that the beautiful state of New York still supports the kind of marriage I signed up for. And I'm not going to share a bed with Kathleen and other men. Polygamy is not what I want. You should know that. You need to tell that to the judge and Kathleen, and we can all save time, effort, and money and proceed with the divorce. I'd had enough. I was done with this nonsense. Next chapter. My attorney set us a court date and called Dr. Snow as a witness. When she was questioned about counseling, she told the judge that I was hesitant to participate. She even tried to suggest that I was intractable. My attorney started asking her questions, at which point she backtracked and told the judge that I had not consented to my wife cheating on me with 2 other men, and that such relationships rarely work out well in a marriage. The judge nodded. Kat made a grimace. I had made my point, and we could proceed to decide the outcome of the case. I assumed that after the court session I mentioned earlier, we would move on to dealing with child custody, the house, finances, and other business issues that needed to be resolved before the papers were signed and the court stamped the case officially done. Not so fast. When I got home that evening after the court hearing, Kat was sitting in the kitchen with a glass of wine. She looked at me. We need to talk. I couldn't believe the words I heard. Talk now? You want to talk now? It's a little late, isn't it? Honey, I need to explain some things to you. Things I should have told you a long time ago, I suppose. Like I said, it's a little late, isn't it? You don't know what it's like, trying to get ahead in a high-pressure law firm. I looked at her and made a gesture with my hand, making a circular motion for her to continue. It was made clear to me that in order to succeed, I would have to play the game. Not only to be a good, no, great lawyer, but also to contribute, to the senior lawyers who will contribute to my career. And? What exactly does that mean? I wanted her to say the words I knew she didn't want to say. Robert made it clear to me that unless I agreed to become something more than a junior associate, my potential at the firm would be limited. If I could become his close associate, he would mentor me. I finally figured out what he wants to do with me. She took a big sip of wine and continued. I know I'm an attractive woman, and I knew he found me very attractive. Robert is a good-looking man, so I thought that at least if I did what he wanted, it wouldn't be so bad. If he had been fat and rough, it would have been a different matter, but he wasn't, so I figured I could do it, and it would give me an advantage in the promotion and subsequent partnership. Another big gulp of wine. I thought it would be easy to hide it from you. You are very gullible. Apparently, I'm too gullible, I said sadly. How long have you been doing this with Robert? Kat stared at the floor and very quietly uttered words that left me shocked and thoroughly shattered. I started having fun with Robert about a year after Beth was born. Beth is our first child. Janie is our second. I did the math. Kat had been having fun with Robert for about 8 years. Shit. I had to sit up before I passed out. Next chapter. I walked out of the house and didn't know what to do. There were a million thoughts running through my brain at the same time. If Kat took a gun and put a bullet in my brain, it wouldn't hurt as much as the realization that I'd been sharing my wife with another man all this time. And then it hit me. Was Janie even mine? I had to find out. I came home. I almost burst through the front door and shouted to Kat, "Kathleen, where are you?" From the bedroom I heard, "In here!" I almost ran to the bedroom door. I almost yelled out to her, "Is Janie mine?" What? Janie. Am I her father? Don't be silly, of course you're her father. Are you sure? You were having fun with Robert when you got pregnant with Janie. Shit. There was dead silence. For an intelligent woman, she was incredibly stupid at times. I turned and walked out of the room. I went into the kitchen and got a drink of water. I heard Kat coming down the stairs. She walked into the kitchen and looked at me. She didn't say anything. The next day, I went online and looked for a lab that does DNA testing. There are several in our area. A quick guide to DNA testing in New York State. New York State has specific requirements for DNA testing, including collection of the sample by a supervising physician. The sample must be accompanied by an order for analysis from your physician or attorney. The lab must be certified by the New York State Department of Health. I contacted the lab, and after some negotiation, I asked them to have the analysis kits delivered to me by courier. I waited until Kat left the house for work and took the kids to the doctor's office. They were a little curious about what I was doing, but nevertheless, they had their cheeks swabbed and the doctor took a small hair sample. Everything was packed and ready for the courier to pick them up the next day. All that was left was to wait for the results. Next chapter. Waiting for DNA results is hard work. The waiting almost killed me. It was almost 2 weeks before the results were sent, and the whole time I was trying to figure out what I should do with the results. If the tests showed that I was the girl's father, I would put it all through the shredder and move on with my life. If, however, the results showed that I was not the biological father of one of the girls, what would I do? That was the question. I thought long and hard and came to the conclusion that whatever the results were, I would move on with my life and nothing would change with my children. I even considered not looking at the test results. It was actually a winning decision, and I decided to put the tests in the safe in my office and only pull them out if I had no other choice. But at the time, I didn't know what that would be. Damn it. Why did Kat have to mess around with this? No job or career was worth the destruction of a family, at least for me. The next time I talked to my wife was to ask if she was making any plans for when our divorce would be final. The arguments continued. The dragging of heels continued. Honey, I don't want a divorce. You and I and the girls are one family. We should be with each other. I love you, Tom. What I did with Robert doesn't take anything away from you. Hell, even when I was with James, he only got crumbs from your table. I couldn't believe the nonsense she was talking. My desk! My goddamn desk! What about my bed? Have you ever thought about that? Did you even think about me or your daughters when you were entertaining both of those men? You? So, lawyers, at least the good ones, have the ability to compartmentalize. I decided that's what my wife was doing when she entertained Robert. For her, it was another planet she was on, and her two worlds. Her career as a lawyer and her family would never meet. We, the girls and me, could be kept separate from her other life, and then one would not affect the other. At least that was her plan. And for a long time it worked. It worked until it stopped working. Now it wasn't working. Kat looked at her manicure and the floor. I got disgusted, so I left. But I came back. You have to get out of this house. Now. And I left. Next chapter. Kat's lawyer managed to stall for quite some time, but eventually time ran out. My lawyer tried to appeal to Kat's sense of justice and sought an uncontested divorce. Kat was not happy with that. Also, depending on the workload of the family law courts, it could take a year or two to finalize a divorce. I needed to find a way to speed up the process. I only had one possible trump card, but that meant I would have to do something I didn't want to do. I'd have to look at the DNA test results. I pulled an envelope out of the safe in my office and placed it on my desk. I took a cup of coffee and stared at it for so long that the coffee ran out and the last drops went cold. I mentally weighed the implications of what I was about to read. If my worst fears came true, how would it affect me and my children? Deep down, I knew that whatever secret lurked in the DNA envelope, it would not change the way I felt about my children. I took a letter opener and carefully cut open the top. There were 4 sheets of paper. I unfolded them, bent back the folds, placed them in the center of the table, and began to read. My world shattered some more. In that moment, I hated Kat more than I had ever loved her. She had given away what I thought was mine. Beth is my biological daughter. Janie is not my biological daughter. I took the 4 sheets of paper to the photocopier and made 3 copies of the documents, then returned the originals to the envelope and put it back in the safe. I knew what I had to do. Next chapter. I called Robert's office, spoke to his secretary, and made an appointment. She had no idea who I was and made an appointment for me in a week. I put the DNA results in an envelope and couriered them to my attorney. She would file them in the case file and could use them in court at the right time. For the next week, I avoided Kat like the plague. I did the usual things with the kids, but if Kat tried to come with us, I made excuses why I couldn't go and let her handle the girls alone. The day of Robert's appointment came and I headed to his office, hoping I wouldn't accidentally see my wife there. In the reception area, I cooled down, eager to get on with my plan. Finally, his secretary looked at me and said he was ready to receive me. When I entered and he saw me, he turned a little pale, but tried to feign a greeting and wanted to shake my hand. I didn't take his hand, but made sure the door was closed. "Well, Tom, what brings you to see me? Let me have my secretary call Kathleen and see if she can join us." I held up my hand to let him know not to bother. "I've come to see you, Robert, and this is not a social visit. I don't think we need to involve my wife today." "Ah. Well, Tom, what do you need to talk about?" I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket and placed it on his desk. He looked at it like it could explode at any second. What's this?" "It's something I want to share with you. You see, I have a problem, and that problem is the wife you've been entertaining for the last 8 years. That problem is a daughter who is not biologically mine. This problem is a divorce that needs to take place. This problem is the discussion I will have with your wife if you cannot convince Kathleen that it is in her best interest to agree to the divorce. This problem is the publicity of what you have been doing with your subordinate. The problem is what your corporate clients will think of the firm when they find out about the ethical standards or lack thereof at this firm. That's my problem, and now it's your problem." Robert blushed brightly. He felt like jumping over the mahogany desk and strangling me. I turned and headed for the door. "You have 24 hours to get her to sign the divorce agreement, or my next visit will be to your house, and I'll have a chat with your wife. Figure it the hell out yourself." I left and got out of there as fast as I could in case he had a gun in his desk. That night when Kat got home, she stormed into the house and was furious. "Why the hell did you go to Robert's office?" I waited a few seconds before answering. Why do you think I went to him? Did he show you what I left him? None of that matters. It doesn't matter who Janie's biological father is. You're her father, always have been, and always will be. What difference does it make? Are you out of your mind? Really? You think it doesn't matter to me that you've been cheating on me for most of our married life? You're just a piece of work, you know that. I gathered my wits and had to remind myself of my lawyer's wise advice. Don't do anything stupid or you'll regret it later, and actively counted to 10 in my mind to regain control of myself. Tom, you know I love you, and you know that this DNA stuff doesn't matter. Kat, you're right. DNA doesn't matter when it comes to Janie. She is my daughter and will always be my daughter. I will fight for her just as much as I will fight for Beth. You can be sure of that. I tried to retire to the kitchen to get a beer and relax. I managed to pour my favorite IPA and headed for the family room. Kat followed me at my heels. Why did you try to threaten Robert about telling his wife about those DNA tests? Nothing will come out of that. Robert's working on getting a court order right now to stop you from going near his house or family and order the DNA sealed. Really? Honey, we need to forget all this divorce nonsense and continue being a family. I'm going to make dinner. Why don't you help me? With those words, she turned and walked into the kitchen. I could hear pots rattling, pans clanging, and other kitchen sounds. As if cooking would make her forget all her problems, and me forget how deceitful she had been for most of our marriage. I sent a quick text to my lawyer, they now charge money for responding to such messages, to let her know that Robert was trying to pressure me to stop me from communicating with his wife and let her know what a jerk he was. They both, Kat and Robert, have forgotten that I know how to use the phone, and it's not hard to get the number. His wife is on several charity committees, so seeing her and talking to her would be pretty easy, which I did. Next chapter. So, rich people live by rules that are different from the rules and norms that the rest of us live by. I've always known this, but talking to Mrs. Robert, her name is Judy, made me see it again. Money can buy privilege, and a lot of money can buy rights. When I introduced myself to her, she quickly admitted that she knew who I was and guessed what I wanted to talk about. I was so shocked by this that I had to focus on what I wanted to tell her. She seemed to know all about her husband's adventures and was well aware that he and my wife, Kathleen, had been quiet lovers for some time. When I pulled out the DNA test results showing that I was not the father of one of my daughters, she quickly looked over the papers and handed them back to me with the question, "What do you want with Thomas?" It was actually very simple. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Do you have any leverage with your husband to convince Kathleen to agree to the divorce I've asked her for?" "Why do you want to divorce her? Is she such a bad wife that you want to get rid of her?" I am very surprised that you are asking that question. Isn't having a long affair, being pregnant by a man other than your husband, and hiding it not sufficient grounds for divorce? Divorce is a stretch. How long have you known about her relationship with Robert? A few months. And otherwise, she's been a good wife and a good mother? I was beginning to realize where this discussion was going, and I didn't like it. In my opinion, she was a shitty wife, and her cheating was intentional. That's saying a lot. How can I trust her with the best interests of our children and our marriage if she had fun with other men, got your husband pregnant, and decided that what I don't know I don't care about? Well, I do know, and it bothers me. Then she dropped her little bombshell. I've known about Robert's adventures for a long time. His relationship with Kathleen is not the first woman he's had an affair with, nor will it be the last. When I became aware of his adventures, I decided that I liked my life and decided that I wasn't going to do anything about it. You see, when I found out Robert was having an affair, I decided I was going to have my own extramarital activities, and I'm enjoying them, and I don't plan on stopping them anytime soon. Oh, for crying out loud. This one was as deluded as my wonderful cheating wife. Look, it's none of my business what you do, but when your husband meddles in my life, it really offends me. Please tell him that it's in his and your best interest for him to convince Kathleen to stop resisting the divorce, sign the papers, and they can all go back to fornicating whenever and wherever they want. Just do it. What do you mean by my best interests? In case you haven't noticed, you have a lot of social prestige. A scandal involving your husband would not reflect well on your social calendar. You'll damn well figure it out on your own. I turned and walked away, feeling soiled for that encounter. A few days later, I was home with the kids and we were playing in the driveway. Kat pulled up and got out of the car. She looked like she was ready to explode. After dinner, as the girls were doing the last of their homework, Kat really wanted to talk. It seemed that Robert and his wife were having a frank discussion about the impact on their lives if his affair with Kathleen became known not only to their social circle, but what it would mean for the firm and their many very conservative corporate clients. A good old-fashioned scandal is very bad for business. So Robert realized that it would not be good for his penniless existence if it became known what shenanigans he was up to during his busy day, and it would not bode well for his wife either. So he and Kat had a heart-to-heart talk, and he urged Kat to find a calm solution to our differences over the divorce. Otherwise, Kat wouldn't be able to become a full partner in the firm. It was simple as that. Get a divorce if you want to keep your job. Gee. I told her I'd talk to her after the girls went to bed. In the meantime, I went to my briefcase and pulled out the divorce application and went through it one more time to make sure it had all the important things I needed. I tossed it in front of Kat and left her alone. When I came down after putting the girls down, Kat was sitting in the family room with a glass of her favorite wine. The document lay on the table with a pen resting on top. I'm going to miss this house. A few months later, the house was sold, and the final financial arrangements were settled. The girls and I moved to a slightly smaller house, but it had a detached garage with a loft and a small pool in the backyard. It wasn't as bright as the other house, but it was all we needed. The girls stayed at the same school. The dog likes it too. Kat's priorities were career, the power and prestige that working as a lawyer at the best firm in the area gave her. She thought she wanted a family, but in the end, we weren't part of her equation for success. I had full custody of the girls, but Kat could see them anytime she wanted. That usually meant a rare Saturday or Sunday. She wanted to be a present mother, but soon became absent. For Beth's birthday, she sent a gift. At the party, she did not attend. Next chapter. You want to hear that I found a bomb model and had fun with it? No. My social life gradually recovered to the point where I began to socialize with a very nice woman I've already told you about, Laura. We became more and more serious with each other, whatever that meant. We were both having fun. The divorce could have been avoided if I had ignored Kat's extramarital affairs. I could have engaged in it with her a couple times a week and been quite happy if I were that kind of person. But I'm not. I'm far from perfect, but I have certain standards, and when it comes to children, my standards are much higher. Their needs come first. I have a responsibility to protect my children, and that means raising them in a stable home. It's pretty simple, at least for me. So, when the dust settled, I took stock of my new life and began to move on. I've told you about Laura before. She is a very nice woman, in her early 30s, good-looking, trim, athletic, and has a great sense of humor. She likes my kids and they like her. She even likes the dog. What more could a man ask for? Tell me. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.